Hey everybody, this is Chris with Overclockers Club. Today we've got some thermal paste to check out. So if you've never heard of Thermal Hero, I would be in the same boat with you because I've never heard of it either. But today I've got some samples here, multiple samples, different variations of the thermal paste along with, let's see, some thermal pads. So we'll be checking these out. And thermal paste is one of those things that largely it gets overlooked. It pretty much works until it doesn't. And you'll know when it doesn't because you'll have all kinds of temperature and thermal throttling issues. A lot of it comes down to not so much the brand you're using, but how well it's applied. And if you got like a little spatula like this, that can make all the difference in getting a good, smooth application of the paste on top of your CPU. And that goes a long way towards the performance. But applying thermal paste is a whole different story, and it's been pretty much beaten to death. So I'll go over it very briefly when we get to that point. So if we look at Thermal Hero here, they've got multiple products on their website. They've got thermal paste, which we have the Neo, Ultra, Quantum, and Metallic, or Metallic maybe. I've got those samples, and then I've got the thermal pad here. I only have the Neo, and maybe at the time it was the only one that was out. I don't have these last two here, the Carbon E6 and F6, but at least we've got the Neo thermal pad, so we'll be checking that out. Okay, the test system here, this is an MSI Carbon Wi-Fi Z790 motherboard. The CPU underneath there is an Intel 13900K. We've got a couple of 16 gigabyte sticks of Vengeance DDR5 RAM. The graphics card, if I can focus, it is an RTX 4070 Super, even though that has really no effect on anything that we're testing today. And the CPU cooler there, you can see it sort of tucked over the edge. That is a Cooler Master PL240 Flux, the white version, again from Cooler Master. Okay, so in the background you're going to hear the air conditioner because it is screaming hot out today and I need to keep the temperature in the room. It's about 72 in here now and I need to keep it there. So that's what you hear in the background. Anyway, what we're doing now is putting a stress test on the system to sort of get some baseline numbers so we can compare the thermal paste here to a standard, which is the Cooler Master and the stock Cooler Master thermal paste. So what we're using is AIDA64 to stress the CPU. There are certainly ways to stress it even more, and the problem is with the 13900K you can easily hit the thermal limits and just sit there at 99C all day long, which really wouldn't prove anything. So we're going with a little milder stress test, and we're using Hardware Info 64 to sort of keep track of what's going on. So our clock speed now, we're a little over 5 gigahertz. We're running an average of 76 degrees C, and we're putting an average of about 180 watts into the system. So we'll use these numbers to compare what this thermal paste here can do. Okay, so we're going to start off with the Neo thermal pad. Looks just like that. If you've never seen a thermal pad before, it's just like the name. It is actually a pad of a constant thickness. And let's see, okay. Is there anything else in there? Yes, let's see. Cleaner, okay, so they give you some cleaning pads or little cleaning wipes there to make sure you get all of the old thermal paste off of your CPU. This actually feels pretty thick. Clean surface from residue, remove protective layer, and place the exposed side of the pad on the chip. Once positioned, gently press on the pad to make it stick. Remove the remaining protective layer and install heatsink. So it looks like we've got, yeah, 2 layers there, and then I'll have to cut it to size. Now, first impression, this just seems awful thick to me. I thought there might have been more than 1 layer there, but looks like this is it. So let's just see. Now I'm measuring it, I understand, with the top protective layer and the bottom protective layer, but I'm getting a little over 1.6. If I really squeeze it, of course, I can get below that, but just coming in contact, a little over 1.6 millimeters. Again, this just seems awful thick to me, so it'll be interesting to see where this comes in. Now, if I try to squeeze it with the layers off, I have a feeling my calipers will just squish down into the material, so it would be kind of hard to get a real accurate measurement. Anyway, all right, let me get my CPU cooler off of the CPU. Okay, so I'm using a little thermal cleaner that they included, and then we'll get the pump body here. In fact, I might just scrape some of that off first. Okay, the pump base is clean, the CPU is mostly clean, and we'll get the pad cut and applied. Okay, so the entire surface of the CPU is covered. My cutting skills are not what they used to be, but I think it's pretty good since we're all covered. Now we'll get the pump body back on there. Okay, kind of like I suspected, as soon as I start the stress test, we shoot way up, start to peg it at 99C. And when I look at hardware info, yeah, we're hitting the max. It's actually already throttling a little bit because we're hitting the maximum temperature right away. So instead of 180 watts, we're dropping down to about 167. Let me reset the averages there. So, sort of like I thought though. Let me go ahead and stop the stress test. And then the temperatures come right back down. So this is available now that I look at it. If we look right here, 0.5 millimeter thickness, 1, 1.5, 2, and 3. This one actually is right there in the part number, 1.5 millimeters thick, which just seems awful thick to me. It seems like the 0.5 would be better, but this is the only sample I've got. So I'm going to look into this a little more and see if there's something that I'm overlooking, something that I'm just doing wrong. I don't think there is, but we'll look into this one a little more. So next we'll move on to the same series here. This is the Neo, but this is the paste. I think we're going to get some pretty good results here with the paste. So you can see where the pad squished out from the pressure of the pump being mounted to the socket there. So this should just peel right off. And there we go. I'll clean that up and then we'll move on to the paste. Okay, so there's the paste version. Comes with a nice little scraper, spatula, spreader, whatever you want to call it. And the instructions here in multiple languages are pretty clear and pretty straightforward. So big thing is cleaning, and it does come with another thermal pad, which is basically it's saturated with isopropyl alcohol, so you want to get it very clean. Apply it, and it says using, let's see, either a 4 millimeter large dot or several smaller dots, and it kind of gives an example of how to do that. And then there's some pictures, and then you spread it out with the little spatula. So I will get that on there. Alright, so I've got my dot on there, and let's see if I can spread it out nice and evenly. And this will take a couple of minutes, so we'll be back when it's all done. Alright, so I've got it kind of smeared around there. Sometimes I'll go ahead and install the pump body and then pull it off and then make sure there aren't any high spots or low spots. So we might do that real quick here. Okay, so that looks like we got pretty good coverage from corner to corner. And I did cycle it a little bit with some stress testing just to sort of heat the paste up, make sure it spreads out evenly, which it looks like it did. So we'll get it back together and then do the actual testing. Okay, so the thermal testing for the, let's see, the Neo thermal paste is going, we're holding at about 5.09 gigahertz. Our temperatures were a couple of degrees warmer than the Cooler Master. It looks like we are dumping 4 or 5 more watts into the system on the average than what we were before. That's just normal variation. So I'm going to go ahead and run the same testing on the rest of these, and then I'll just come back with the results, because the process of swapping out thermal paste and doing the testing is the same, and there's no sense putting you to sleep with that. So we'll be back with the results. Okay, so I'm wrapping this up. The last one I'm testing here is the metallic, and it's a little different animal than the others here. The Ultra and the Quantum, these are both thermal pastes, and they performed about as I expected. They brought the temperature down a degree or two over the stock Cooler Master, and again, that's about what I expected there. Nothing earth-shattering, but like I said, about what I was expecting to see. This is a little different though. This is actually a liquid metal, and if we look at the instructions here, it says the main components are gallium and indium, and if you know anything about those elements, at least the gallium does not play well with aluminum, so it says right here you need to keep it away from aluminum. It will actually dissolve the aluminum if it's the right concentration of gallium, or if you have enough of it in contact with the aluminum. And it talks about that right here. If you've got a copper heat sink or nickel-plated copper, you're okay, which is what most of them are. But like I said, you want to keep this away from aluminum. Now it has a couple of little tiny nozzles here. This one here is for dispensing, and it's pretty small. And this one here, it says it's for absorption. I think that means if you put a little bit too much down, you can suck it back up. And then it's got a couple of these little like cotton swabs for applying the liquid metal here to the surface of your heat sink, and it says to put it on your CPU, the top of your CPU also. Alright, so we will go ahead and get this applied. And this goes on very differently from your regular thermal paste that you may be familiar with. I'm kind of smearing it all over both surfaces here with the little Q-tip that they supply. And this is a metal that is essentially liquid at room temperature, a lot like mercury, although it is not mercury. You can see when you try to smear it around, it sort of smears around, I guess, and sort of doesn't. So I'll have to sort of work at this a little bit to make sure I get a nice even coat over the entire surface. Okay, so as I work at it a little more, it does start to smooth out or flatten out a little more than when I first started. And you do need to make sure that you get the surfaces absolutely clean with the little supplied alcohol pad. Okay, so it took me a couple of minutes to get the metallic all spread evenly on there, and unfortunately I did have a nice clip that showed it, and I of course managed to delete it, but I did get the testing done, and let's take a real quick look at the numbers. And as you can see here, the Cooler Master is the stock setup that I had. We were running a little over 5 gigahertz. We're dumping about 181 watts of power, and we were averaging at about 76 degrees Celsius. And then the Neopad and the Neo Paste. Now, I'm going to talk a little more about the Neopad here in a minute, but as you could see from the clip earlier, it did start to really heat up. We hit 99C. It starts to throttle back, so it starts regulating how much power it puts in. So it did drop the power and the clock speed down a fair amount. And again, there's a reason for that. I did contact the manufacturer, and I kind of know what's going on there. So the Neo Paste, of course, performed much better, and we got a little bit warmer than the Cooler Master. Again, the same speed, roughly the same amount of power being dumped into it. The Ultra Paste, again with the same input, we end up a couple of degrees cooler, so we're down to 74. The Quantum Paste, we bring it down about a degree off of that, again with roughly the same speed and power going in. And the Metallic Paste, of course, comes in at 5.08, 182 watts going in, and that was, of course, the best performing at 70 degrees Celsius. So the manufacturer was suggesting to me, here's a screenshot from where I first cut the thermal pad to fit, and they said, you know, you really need to trim the sides back a little bit so that when it squishes out, it doesn't go out to the point that I saw here where it was really squeezing out around the top of the CPU cover. So this is really intended not for overclocking, not for the abuse that you would see with a 13900K when it's overclocked, of course. This is more of a workhorse thermal pad for a system that's going to be running without being overclocked and generating a large amount of heat. So it comes down to the application that I was trying to use this in is not really ideal. Plus this is a little bit on the thick side, so they do have the thinner version, so it would probably perform a little better with a thinner pad, but again, not really the best way to use it. So the thermal paste here actually worked better. So let's go over the pricing here for what these cost now. From Amazon, I have some pricing here. This is all the information I have currently. So you'll notice that the quantities sort of vary there. For example, the metallic there at the top, 5 grams is $32. Now, the sample that I've got here is only 1 gram, so I don't know if you can scale it by saying, well, if 5 grams is 32, then 1 gram would be 1/5 of 32. I don't know if it scales exactly like that or not, but this sort of gives you an idea of the pricing. And again, the others there are 25 grams. That's plenty for many applications. The bottom one there, Thermal Hero Ultra, is 10 grams for $20, so that's roughly $2 a gram. So for now, that's all the information I have on the pricing. Okay, so overall, I'm pretty happy with the performance here from the Thermal Hero samples that I tested. The metallic here, of course, was the top performer. And not really a surprise. It is a little different animal with the liquid metal, so the application is a little bit different. Again, you really want to have everything as clean as possible, especially when you use the metallic. So if you need some new thermal paste or you got a system build coming up, you might want to check out Thermal Hero. This is Chris with Overclockers Club. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.